We fully, I think
Can we answer that?
Sure, we're going to see lawsuits.
One of the reasons we're getting together is that there is a lawsuit that's coming. It's easier for 6 entities to sue than it is for 1 entity to sue or defend.
We do have a consensus on that viewpoint.
That was months ago we came out. That
This is the new in my mind. And again, I'm one person on the board, but this is the new battle line to push back. People or the public are talking about pushback. This plan should be the pushback for the North State, in my mind.
I made the comment, we had a breakout meeting in the Red Bluff meeting where I talked to some folks, and I said, in my mind, the state screwed up. They're allowing us to determine what we want to do, rather than, instead of having a solution in search of a problem, which is typically the way it works, it governs from the top down, is hopefully we on the bottom can put together our solution and then just say, okay, here it is, and this is what we're going to do, and if you don't like it, you know, tough, we're sorry.
Is it available for a public meeting?
I've actually spoken to a couple. But the thing about it is, though, the only way we can do that is to understand what people in this region want to do. And that's why we have these meetings where we civilly talk to each other and get input. And we've learned stuff today. You know, and that's what we're doing. But I know that my livelihood is dependent on water, and I'm looking at some other. I mean, we've been farming here since the 1850s in Northern California. We're aware of what goes on. We're aware of the importance of water. We're aware of the importance of good stewardship of the land. Other people think we're not.
All we have is the guidelines that are given to us to go by to know what you're thinking. So thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Well, yes, and again, as individuals on the board, sometimes we don't feel as though we can speak as individuals because we don't want to speak for the rest of the board. But I think we're getting to the point where it's time for us to start speaking out and letting you know what we're thinking. So,
the other addendum to that is we've been farming the same piece of land for 150 years, and it's still producing. We're doing something right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing that, as Mr. Sales has said, one of the things in my mind about this IRWM process is, just as he said, this is one of the first times that the state has actually funded us to put together a plan. And in my mind, this plan is going to be contrary to a lot of the state goals when it comes to water management. It will be based on science, and it will be based on public input, and it will be based on regional need, and it will be our argument as to why we don't need to comply with all of the needs and regulations of the rest of the state. That's not really our problem. We didn't move into a desert and then bring in 1 million people and build it together and say, okay, we have 1 million people in this desert, now we have to find water for us. They should have thought about that when they were developing it. They should have been working on water storage needs and the like in this state 30 years ago. But regulation, especially the ESA and other wonderful laws like that, have really forced us up against the wall with regard to the North State and our water resource. So yes, it's time for us to get together, to push back, to speak out, and say, this is our plan, it doesn't involve you. We're doing the best to work together. We are organized, we're not wasting our water, we're doing the best we can. So please leave us alone. Yes.
Yes, I have a question about that, because in reading through those guidelines, in order to get the money up for the grant, you have to abide by these things that they've put in there. You have to prove to them that you're following their guidelines before you get any funding. So what's the purpose of this if not to get money from the government in order to fund these projects?
Well, in response to that, in my mind, we have to address their guidelines. It doesn't mean that by addressing the guidelines, it doesn't mean that we have to agree with the overarching mentality. AB 32, for example, which is the new green philosophy for California is not good policy in my opinion.
Leigh, maybe I could add a bit
Yes,
on that,
and go ahead.
if I may. Again, I'm Steve McCauley with the consulting team. Very good point, ma'am. The guidelines, 16 very specific check marks you have to abide by. For the most part, they say, do your best to evaluate this, do your best to evaluate that. You will do your best effort. I'm convinced you will all do your best effort, the public will do your best effort, and the plan will be your best effort. And it'll still meet the guidelines. It doesn't mean that you have to implement certain things on someone's agenda, whether that person is in Sacramento or in another country or in Southern California, or even somebody in Knights Landing. Pick someone just out of there. Yeah. So the guidelines are, they look onerous, they're not, but it's really a checklist to do your best efforts to address things. And it's really nothing more than that. And that's coming from a consultant who's paid to do these kinds of things. And if we don't do it right, we'll hold our feet to the fire. But I think that you can get what you want by going through the guidelines with the attitude I think the board has.
Can I ask Steve a question? Steve, from your prior experience working at DWR,
Yeah.
and seeing a lot of these processes coming into play, new laws, you know, before it was get a watershed plan. So Blaine County did upper, lower, Stony Creek watershed plan, and now they're told, well, you can't get money unless you're in the higher MWP plan after spending hundreds and thousands of dollars in Prop 12, 13, and previous. So when this is done, and we do our best, and I totally agree with that, where do you see it going from here? I mean, are all these efforts and all these meetings, they're really going to help us? Help us or set our course?
It's my personal opinion on the agenda.
Your experience.
We don't know who you are.
Yeah. I mean, it's
For those of you who don't know who Steve was in former life.
yeah,
No, we're giving him cover.
Yeah, exactly.
thanks a lot.
Because I respect your opinion.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Janet. But it's no secret that, I mean, one of the issues that Monique captured in the public comments is that the state and federal governments are broke. And yeah, there's still money. We're not entirely broke. But we do know, as citizens, that there's not going to be a lot of money floating around for the foreseeable future. And I think the most we could ever hope to get for any of our projects might be 10 or 15%. I'm just picking that number out of the air of federal and state money. The idea of having 100% of your project paid with somebody else's money is probably kind of gone. I think everyone's there. The real benefit of doing this is that the region as a whole talks, they communicate, which they hadn't done before, so we all understand each other's problems very well, so that we can rally behind individual projects that different entities might have, so you provide political support. The city of Colusa may need will need new wastewater treatment plant disposal options, whether it's land disposal or very expensive surface water disposal. Imagine having all 6 counties saying, this is what we think is right for the city of Colusa. And you can pick dozens or hundreds of projects that are like that. So it's political support that helps. I think the real benefit of this, and you learn this in Integrated Regional Water Management Plan 1A, the real benefit of this kind of process is everyone's talking. But the idea that there's going to be a pot of $2 billion down the road is just not going to happen. This process is worth doing because if it's only worth doing because of communication, it's still worth doing. That's what we've heard from the people we work for. And I'm not part of it. I didn't want to be a focal point here, but
No, but you know, I personally agree with your comments. It's the communication, and yes, there are strings attached with regard to future grant funding. You do get a priority for projects if you're part of an IRWM. So again, I go back to Jack and the Giant. Okay, if Jack has got a couple of beans, and he could get a few more beans by being part of an IRWM, we grow a few more beanstalks, we can get up to the Giant's palace faster, we can take care of the guy, chop down the beanstalks, and be good. So, but we can get additional monies by doing this, and then the projects regionally, rather than the counties and individual governments up here bickering over who gets the money, we can all agree, yeah, take it to Calusa, or take it to Shasta, or we need to improve things over in Butte County, and the group understands why we're doing it because of the communication, and we're happy to have the project accomplished in that area. And we can rally again, like Steve says, the political support to bring money up here through this process. Any other thoughts?
I know there's a couple comments on the floor, but I can just add one more perspective to that. Another big bonus I see out of this is that, and then we've all been saying it for the last few years, but the next biggest major battle for California will be water. Beyond the economy, beyond pollution line, water is the big issue, and it's going to be here for a while. And I think if nothing else, this helps focus the discussion, not just with county boards or with farmers. I mean, it's everybody is starting to realize that water is a big issue, and you better get involved and be part of the solution. I think that this board is going to help generate that discussion.
And I agree. More public comments. Mr. Thomas.
Hello, one more thing, and I'll keep it short.
Okay.
Because I know I've spoken most of my pieces I want to say anyway. And this is old stuff, baby, Owens Valley. Everybody knows about it. A lot of farmers got greedy, okay? We can talk about how much we want to farm, but where does that line go? Well, how broke are we? Look at these conservatives, what they've done. I'm against all of them, but you know what? The farmers are broke. You know, they need help. A lot of people. Okay, this Mill Creek, to me, is they need money to run their water district. Okay, and here they got a NACA wants the water. They bought into it. You know, they've sold out already. This is today, not where that other place lost their water. This is Tama County's water going south. You know, because of money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Cadd, Chester County. I was looking at the overheads we had here and reviewed DWR guidelines and statewide priorities. You see, DWR is still telling us what we can and can't do on a statewide basis. There's another organization that's going to be, that needs to be brought into your thought process, and that's the Department of Fish and Game. Yes. Department of Fish and Game is doing a lot of stuff up in Siskiyou County, which has got red flags all over because it's headed our way. I mean, you're right, it's headed this way. So it needs to be in your thought process of what's coming up and what's the possibilities that are coming before us. I mean, Go back to 09. I mentioned SBX 77. There was 3 different extraordinary sessions. SBX 1 in a series of bills. If I remember correctly, there's 6 bills under that session. If I remember correctly, under SBS 6, there were a series of bills. And I think there were 7 or 8 bills under that one. And then there's SBX 7, and there's 8 bills under that. I remember that there's 8 bills there. So you got a total of, say, 7, 6, you got a total of about 25 bills that pertain to water. One of those bills is the $11 billion water bond. The reason why it wasn't put on the 10 ballot is because the powers that be in Sacramento knew that it was going to go down in flaming defeat. Now they're in the process now of looking back and saying, well, let's see if we can get it on 12. And I don't know if they have enough gumption there. They don't? Yeah. See, so it'll be 14.
It's already
gone. I hadn't heard it was totally out.
Well, it's very close to being gone if it's not already gone.
Yeah. So they're going to try it in 14. There's $11 billion more money. So with the process of what's going on, it's coming at us from so many different directions. I find it hilarious today that I'm sitting next to a lady here that happens to be DWR. If I'd have known that, I'd been pinching her or something. But if you...
Well, I had a thought, I had a comment. I've been working with GWR in Red Bluff for 10 years on various odds and ends. And one thing I will say about the Red Blood people, they live in the North State, they work in the North State, they believe in the North State. They are not necessarily the state mentality of DWR. For the most part, they have regulations imposed on them by the central government, but they do their best to work through those to protect the North State, and in most cases, if not all cases, they have been a very good advocate for North State. So she's actually a friend. So
I'll just finish up. The
Yes.
comment was made that water is the next big war. Water is the new gold in the state of California.
Yes.
And it's right, it's going to be a war. And it's something we really need to keep an eye on, because it's coming, it's so many, climate action plan, Department of Fish and Game, DWR, I mean, you see, in the $11 billion water bond.
Yes.
I mean, there's so many different places that is coming at us that we've got to be aware and be awake. And the people in the community need to come forward and have their voice heard and understand what's going on. Thank you, I'll sit down.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Just a quick one. I'm in Bella Vista Water. I go on their website. It's water crisis. They're taking the language and turning everything into a crisis, even up in the North State. And that's not true with the North State. So we have to be talking about this and with each other and the water board. So.
Yeah, just to tack onto that, last year there was a integrated regional water management seminar down in Sacramento. They asked me to speak on one of their boards, and just as you said, they started it off, how are these regions addressing the water crisis? And my opening comment was exactly what I said earlier. We don't have a water crisis in the North State. Our crisis is other people trying to take our water. And when I said that, you could hear a pin drop in the rest of the building, because the mentality there had no idea that a region, or at least someone from a region, would think that way. Because so many other people do have that problem.
But the North State's being educated that way.
Yes, I understand.
People out there think we do.
Yes, I understand.
Get one back there.
I have a question. On the website from the technical, well, let's see, it's the financial page from the website, the West Yost Associates website.
Yeah.
It's when he said that only 15% or so of the money would be coming from the government, it says here, we expect that local cost shares will be provided for the first two subcategories by way of a combination of utility rate increases, revenue bond sales, and appropriations by the governing bodies. So that's another concern, that you may not get all that you're looking for from the federal government, and our utility rates are going to be raised to pay for these projects. So could you address that?
I will. I haven't said much. I think that we're pretty united to protect our water rights for our future generations in the north. And I've never voted for a utility tax in Butte County, and I don't see voting for one in the future. I think that what we're trying to do as a region is resist what most of your concerns are. And I think that your input's important and guide us along the way and make sure we don't fall into the trap of being divided off one by one. Just like the individual water district that just sold water rights. That's what we're trying to resist. There's nobody here that's trying to conspire to give our water to the water contractors. DWR, that bus is driven by the water contractors in the south part of the state. I'm here to resist that. I'm not here to roll over and give anything away. I don't think there's anybody up here that's willing to do that. It's a misconception. We need your input and your guidance. We don't need the fight to be divided and be picked off one at a time. That's a historical thing that's gone on. We have a Warville Dam in our backyard. We divided the community of Warville against the county just to try to keep them giving us what they impact us each year. I think, sucks $12 million a year out of my community. Loss of property tax and the impacts of the dam, negative impacts. We don't get a nickel. And that's how they do it, they divide you. So hopefully you'll keep your input coming, keep us on track and understand. I don't believe there's one person up here that's trying to do what some people think we're conspiring to do, is give up water rights or benefits to the south of the state.
I'd like to speak to that as far as utility rates, and I look at this from a local perspective as a general manager of an irrigation district. And if we get grant funding for projects, and we have a couple underway right now that have state, both state and federal funding, they almost invariably contain cost share, local cost share, which means we provide usually up to 50% of the project cost. So as an irrigation district, we have to provide that money, and usually for capital improvement projects that benefit our district and our ratepayers. And so if we don't have money in reserves or some other funding source to meet our cost share, then it's, you know, we look at our rate structure. We take it to our ratepayers and say, okay, we need to improve our infrastructure. Are you willing to pay for this, or we're not staying in business? Basically, is usually the question. And when it comes to aging infrastructure, and so these are it's just business and special district decisions that we have to make. Do we maintain our infrastructure and continue to provide a service that meets our customers' needs, or we just let everything fall apart? And oftentimes, grant funding provides us the ability to go ahead with a project that we couldn't afford without that. But the shortfall inevitably is going to fall on ratepayers, because that's how we're funding it. And so there's nothing wrong with that, it's just how things work. So I think that's probably what some of that, when there's cost share involved, the government, if they're willing to pay for part of a project, the rest of it is up to the entities to pay for it. We have to find our ways to do that. And oftentimes it's the ratepayers that make up that.
Will you put that up for a vote to the ratepayers, or will you just arbitrarily raise their rates?
We are subject to Proposition 218, which requires any rate increases to be, we go through the process that's prescribed by law, and that includes the opportunity for ratepayers to deny that increase, certainly.
Now from a county perspective, when you're working from the county level, a couple other ways to avoid issues like that, we actually have sort of folded into this plan. Some of the grants that are available, some of the public monies that are available also take into account the economic ability of the region. And that's why the part about disadvantaged communities is talked about in this IRWM plan. Also, tribal interests also can garner additional funds and support, where you may have a pot of money that says, we'll give you 50%, it's up to you to match 50%, or it's a 70-25 cost share or something like that. Now, when you come in toward those grants from a disadvantaged community standpoint, now granted, that sort of makes my skin freak out every now and then when I think about that. But when you're talking about bringing funding into disadvantaged communities, into areas that have tribal support and the like, you can receive additional funds from the minimums that they have identified. And then on top of that, a lot of times for the matching funds, you can do something called a cost share or in-kind cost share, which means that the counties or group of counties would provide staff and manpower to help implement that program and that grant. And they will take that into account. So a lot of times it isn't necessarily additional money out of the pockets of the community of the region, but it's how you frame the grant that you bring in, how you utilize some of the enhancements, like disadvantaged communities, et cetera, and then how much regional support you can get by in-kind services, by having your staff members work on it, your government officials working on that. That counts towards the contribution. So sometimes you can build it together.
A little too far afoot here, but make sure people understand, What you're talking about is individual counties, individual agencies. This board does not have the authority to go raise anybody's rates.
Right.
So just to make that clear.
Yes, and thank you for clarifying that. But there are ways to mitigate those concerns.
I wanted to say one thing on the goals, getting back to the goals. One thing I think we'd be missing an opportunity not to put hydro in there. I mean, they're talking about climate change, and, you know, we might be able to use that to our benefit. I don't know what's cleaner than hydro. I don't know why some people don't understand
So there's hydro.
But let's put that in there, and there's also some big, you know, PG&E and some people there that we wouldn't need to do anything other than promote. You know, there's a lot of side effects about hydro, and it would fit their objective and it would fit ours. You know, so I don't know why we shouldn't put that as part of it. Unless that messes something up, but
No, I think we did get some responses that hydro should be looked at. And then that would be a source of income for us. Any other public comment or input?
Yep. Briefly. Back here.
Yes. Yeah, hi, how you doing?
I just briefly say, I mean, everything I've heard from this board doesn't surprise me because I've watched a lot of these folks, but I think the aim of the board, what we're hearing and in developing this idea was, you know, how can we get together as a region and manage these resources, find out what tools are available to us. But what this board can do is limited. There are, I'm going to disagree a little bit with the chair, if in regards to a crisis, because we have potential crises coming at us. If we manage these things better, we can avoid those things. Working together, speaking in one voice is the great opportunity that's here for the region. I mean, all this water flows through this area, and right now we have settlement contract folks on the river cut to 75%. I represent 90% of the water service contractors of the federal project, and we're at 30% as we sit here today. 30%, which includes Bella Vista's, one of the other folks that are there. So there are some real challenges, and without the settlement contractors bumping up to 100%, solutions to those problems aren't readily available. And we've got 50% permanent crop top loss. Exploring options. All of this in light of last year was 180% water year, and here we are 1 year later in this circumstance. And working on how we can maximize the water available to us and protect the water that we have is where I see this focus. And it can't all happen this spring. It's not going to happen on this spring. I've got an area of origin lawsuit that our folks have decided is important enough so we don't become the Owens Valley that the gentleman mentioned earlier. We have a trial court, we think mistakenly, but rule against us on that. Now the Ninth Circuit's going to dictate that. But also the water managers throughout the valley are also working very rapidly to create kind of a defense position on a state water resources control board, new Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan, that if implemented based on public trust doctrine and just looking at one problem with the fish issues, puts Shasta in Deadpool 8 out of 10 years, takes away all our hydropower. I mean, it just devastates the North State. And then folks are going to be working on a lot of fronts. I guess my point here is these folks communicating, working together, doing what they can, but also identifying where we can work on other parts of this. It's going to take, it's the water districts, it's the counties, it's the region working together to protect this resource. And a lot of battles are going on a lot of different fronts. And otherwise we are going to have that crisis. So, and this is one challenging year, I will assure you.
And I can't disagree with that. CDP is 30%. State water project is down to 50 now. It's
50. They dropped from 60 to 50.
They dropped it from 60 to 50. We're way off on our
and if I could say,
rainfall.
If I could add, if area of origin were being followed, you reduce exports. Export CBP water service contractors are at 30% too, just because of the size of the contracts. Up here, the contracts equate to about 400,000 acre feet. South of Delta's 3 million acre feet. By them dropping from probably 30% to probably about 22%, we'd all be whole. That's the difference.
Well, Butte County has the right of origin lawsuit going, and we're looking at a settlement, but wouldn't it be better if the whole region had a right of origin lawsuit, and then we'd be sharing the burden of the cost, let alone we'd be the benefit as a region. So that's something that can come out of this, instead of doing it separately.
We have to, ours had to go in federal court because of diversity jurisdiction of being part of a federal project. But I like the way you're thinking.
Yeah. Yes,
Leigh, I mean, they actually pay me to say this. We've got some more public comments to go through and a few more agenda items if we could to get through today. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, and I apologize to the rest of the board, but I think we're starting to get in touch with the public, and I think that's important.
Hello?
So are there any other public comments, or we can move on? Mr. Ross?
Oh, no, just George.
Okay. Okay. Do you have anything else for goals and objectives, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 8, the action would be to look at our calendar now that we've set a calendar for quarterly meetings. As you've heard, we're still massaging the goals and objectives. We're still receiving public comment. And so the board should consider having a special meeting. I believe that would be May. Is that correct?
May I say one thing?
Yes, if you could come forward.
So the idea behind having a special meeting is just to make sure that you have enough opportunity to consider all the information before you to make any changes that you want before we get to June. Our concern is if we don't have the May meeting and we get to June and you have some changes that you want to make to the draft that the TAC recommends to you, that then we have another quarter to go before we can actually get something adopted and start work on the next phase. So if in the May meeting you are able to accomplish what you need, we can always cancel the June meeting. It's just to give us another opportunity on the calendar, May and June if needed.
So
May 7th. May 7th?
we would be talking May 7th for a special board meeting, 9 o'clock. And it would be here in at the Willow City Chamber. So with that, if there's no concerns about that, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and second, Mr. Sales, Mr. Mooney. Any other comments from the board? Comments from the audience? All those in favor of the special meeting in May signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Takes care of that. And now that I've expressed my opinion, our friend from DWR, Mary Rabbit, will come forward and tell us what's going on.
Well, I'm glad there wasn't a line in the ladies' room. I figured I at least had 5 minutes there. Anyways, well, where do I start? I'm Mary Randall. I'm the DWR representative to work with the North Sac Valley IRWM. I agree with many of the comments that have been expressed. I differ with some, but we do want to get out of here eventually. So just some comments. We have a DWR update, and a lot of it has links in here. So this was just information that might be of interest. But I'm going to try to address some of the other concerns that have been brought up. Persian about water. One thing that's really important, that going to the IRWM conference that they had last year, they have people that have been working together as IRWM groups or groups like that for years, longer than this group has been together. And the one main comment they said was, well, it was two-tiered. They got together to give money for their projects. But what they really found was that the communication was so important, okay? I'd like to ask the gentleman from Sutter County, would you recognize
the board members here from Shasta County, if you would have seen them on the street before you got involved in this.
No, did not know anybody here.
And see, that is what's really important. They have a connection. They can talk to each other. They know what their feelings are. And they don't agree on everything, but we all have families. Do you agree with everybody in your family? No, but you work together to try to accomplish what you really need to do. That's what all these people are here for. That's what the TAC is here for. They really value your input. You know, until the recent developments, they had very few people coming to the meeting. And so they do really appreciate that they've got your input. But, so I think that's great. But anyways, communication is what really is important in working together. And let me give you one example. I'm working with a group up in Lassen County for, just to make it easy, let's say the Susan River area. And I get tons of emails. And one of them came in, I think it was like on a Monday, for a grant application, not IRWM, but a different grant application. And it was due like on Friday. I almost didn't send it out because I hadn't gotten, you know, the application period had been open, but I hadn't heard about it. So I sent it to Vicki, I'm sure, and I sent it to the Susanville people. Because they had been working together, those people worked day and night. They managed to put together an application. They had all these resources because they had networked with all these people. They actually got a grant application so that they can work on the river where it goes through Susanville. Because it's in pretty bad shape. I mean, they've got mattresses down by the river, and it's just, it runs right by the high school. It's in bad shape. But the only reason they got it was because all those people were willing to work together, because one person couldn't have put together that grant application. And so that's what's really going to benefit you people, and also being able to talk with one voice. You're going to prioritize what your goals and objectives are. What's really important to the North Sac Valley group. Not what's important to the Tea Party, not what's important to Beck, what's not important to Aqua Alliance, what's important to the North Sac Valley. So this is why we're here. It's a great effort, and yeah, talking to other people and being to work together on that. So anyways, there I'm off my high horse. If you have questions in DWR, I also want to tell you, I love my job. And when I tell people I love my job, they think I'm kidding. But I have a great opportunity because I am trying to help you guys get through the mire of DWR. Now, I haven't worked for DWR very long. And so I know it's a quagmire. And so if you have questions, feel free to get a hold of me. And I may not have the answer, but I'll work my darndest to try and find the answer. Okay? And I guess I should make one comment about this grant funding, okay? And that is, okay, they might not want to do everything that's in the guidelines, and the guidelines are DWR's guidelines. They're not North Sac Valley's IRWM guidelines. And there are things that they have to do, and they have to address them like Steve said. You know, they don't have to address them like they're going to address them in LA, because we're not LA. But if they're accepting grant funding, then you do have to comply with the rules of grant funding. And they're not always pleasant, but you know, that's the name of the game. But it is a great opportunity, because without this grant funding, this wouldn't have happened. And so this is a really good opportunity. You might as well make the best of it. Will there be grant funding in the future? I don't know. I'm not a politician, never want to be. But it's an opportunity to let's prioritize what we need to address. And if you come up with a project list, these guys are not going to vote for a fountain in front of the Reading City Hall as a water project, because that's not going to be a priority for them. They're not going to, and the city of Reading is not going to raise your rates to do that as an IRWM project. There's many, many important projects that we have up here. I worked for the regional board for 20 years. No, I did not love that job, okay? I appreciate the constraints that they're under the water treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plants industry to try and resolve them. They've got some serious issues because of the regulations that are addressing them, and infrastructure just in general. The infrastructure in America is in terrible shape. So if you can get some free money to address things that need to be done, that's where you should use it. Nobody's here going to give you free money to address something that's not important, because their laundry list in each county is so long of things that need to be done. And your input as to what you think is important is really valuable. Okay, so much for that. Let's see. Oh, and then, so you guys can all read what I put on here. One thing I would suggest that under flood, the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, it's a public draft. It sounds like there's some knowledge that could probably be gained from maybe at least reading parts of it. I haven't been able to get through it yet, but this again is another plan that's really important, and it goes for the Sacramento Valley down to the San Joaquin. If you're interested in water, please look at that, okay? And the board, the Central Valley Flood Protection Board, that used to be the Reclamation Board, if that name's familiar to you, those are the people that are acting on that. And these links should all work. If they don't, I guess what I should have done is put my email on the bottom of this. I do a lot of meetings, so if you have questions for me, the best way to get a hold of me is M. Randall, that stands for Mary Randall, at water.ca.gov. I'll do my absolute best to answer your questions. I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory on here. One thing I would want to mention on climate change, sorry about that, is DWR has put out a handbook on climate change to, at least in part, to help the IRWM regions address that issue in your plans. So you can look at that also. So I'm almost afraid. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. And Laura, if I need help, you're going to have to come up and facilitate.
I'm going to come and write your email up, so I'll be
okay. Yes.
Well, first of all, I take exception to the free money. It's not free money.
No, it's not free, no.
Well, you know, and I don't hold that against you, but I find that most public employees think of it as free money, and it's our money.
Yeah.
And whenever our money goes to Sacramento, it always comes back less of it and strings attached. So that is why we're skeptical of all of this process. The state of California has tons, or has had tons of our money, and they've wasted it, squandered it, used it unwisely, and now they're coming back to the taxpayers and asking for more. And we're tired of it. We're sick of it. We don't have any more money in our pockets. So I object to the use of the term free money.
You're correct. It is not free, and yes, I pay my share of taxes, and sometimes I feel more than my share of taxes, so, yes?
I have a question about the grants. Have you studied any of the grants that have been, that people apply for along here? Because if it has sustainable in it, that means that we're hooking up with Agenda 21, and we do not want to be involved with sustainable anything.
Well, we haven't applied for any grants yet.
Yeah, and they may beg to differ with you. Other people in the community may beg to differ with you with Agenda 21. I'm not even sure if all the board members know what Agenda 21 is.
All right, it's sustainable development, and it's what the United Nations is doing. And we bring this up all the time, and people look down and they don't want to face up what's happening. But they're trying it. They're doing tall buildings, trying to put people, moving them in the city. They're having problems with that. And I think that when you take a grant and it has sustainable in it, sustainable development, sustainable water, you have to be careful because that is part of it. It's just something else that you should think about.
And I think the people on the board, they don't even like the state shoving things down their throat. I'm sure they don't like the United Nations.
Well, they might not be aware of it, is what I'm saying.
So if I could just step in and say, this was something that was brought up at the Red Bluff meeting and other meetings, as folks are concerned about this United Nations Agenda 21. and that they encourage people on the board to become educated about what that is and to make sure that you are not being part of it unintentionally. So I just wanted to give you that feedback from that meeting. Thank you.
From the guidelines website here, it encourages people for, if you want to check your project level greenhouse gas emissions, they recommend that you go to the World Resources Institute in cooperation with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
There you go.
Right in your guidelines.
There you go.
We don't have any guidelines yet.
Oh, the first thing that you are.
That's your book.
The DWR.
And it refers you to a reference that I guess would help you measure what your emissions are. What is that reference?
It says that, yes, to measure your greenhouse gas emissions. I guess there's a template you can use that's put out by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
So that is referenced in the DWR guidelines.
So I would encourage everybody, as Mary did, to attend the flood plan. I followed that for invested 2 or 3 years now, following that and helping develop that. And it's not terribly ag friendly. It's largely an urban flood protection plan that really, I think, leaves the environment and ag out of the picture. And they had a first meeting February 24th where they took comments, and there's going to be another series April, I think it's 5th, 6th. There's 3 meetings. One of them's in Yuba City. I think
They just put those on, yeah.
and so they're a full day meeting, and the plan is about 10 inches thick, but the main content of the plan is really in chapters 3 and 4 of the main document, which is only about this much reading. It's not terrible, but you get a pretty good feel for it.
And if you want more information on those dates, I'm pretty sure they're on the front page of the DWR website.
They are. And so for folks who are wanting to make sure you understand what's being talked about, it's on Mary Randall's March 2012 DWR update. That first paragraph that talks about flood and the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. That is a document being put out by the State Department of Water Resources, flood protection for the entire Central Valley. And that's the plan that Louis was saying, read chapters 3 and 4 if you want to be informed of the direction that the state is headed with flood protection. It is still a draft. There are still public comment opportunities. It is not this process. It is not linked to this process in any way, but it is very interesting to folks who care about water and what the state is doing on water. So that's this first paragraph on the last page of your packet here.
And the meeting will be April 6th from 9 to 5, Marysville at the Marysville Government Center.
And I know there's been at least some comment of trying to get something further up in the valley, internally working with DWR because they realize that's pretty far south. Yeah.
I have one last later question here on water runoff. I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger issue here. And I don't know if this board is taking that up or not, with some maybe even, costs incurring on some of this stuff. Irrigating lands and runoff in our county, it was our fairgrounds got a bill for $5,000 to pay.
So the question is whether this plan might talk about the issue of runoff, both ag runoff and others. And I see Ryan, you're nodding that yes, that may be something that this plan talks about.
If we have to deal with it. If it comes to a project to deal with it, yeah, probably.
Well, this plan is not going to address regulatory issues such as irrigating.
So Stan's making an important distinction. What Ryan said is true, is if there's a project to address that regulation, that project may be something that's discussed, but Stan is making the point that this plan is not about regulation, it's not about changing regulation or adding regulation, it's about dealing with what there is and what your priorities are.
And the stormwater regulation at the State Water Resources Control Board and at the Regional Water Quality Control Boards is a very big issue.
The one thing you could think about is this board could provide a forum to discuss those issues and provide a nice, efficient way for everybody to learn about the flood plan or irrigated land, water. It's likely that we'd all take our own individual positions on how we felt about those, but it's so hard to keep up with all those things, for folks that have jobs.
So, anyway.
And that is something that may be reflected in the draft goals and objectives. We did have a comment from one of our TAC members saying that as part of the ongoing dialogue of the board, it's not just necessarily about implementing the plan that you come up with, but it may be just what Louis said, is a forum for discussing controversial issues that impact the region and either speaking with one voice about it if you choose to do so, or at the very least just educating each other across counties about what you're dealing with and what your positions are on those things. So that may be something that ends up in the goals and objectives as a recommendation for the TAC potentially. I don't want to get ahead of the TAC, but that was suggested by a TAC member as being a potential function of the board in the future.
Because right now, the board and the TAC, they're focused on getting the plan developed. That they only have till fall of 2013 to get that done. But if you go and look at other IRWM regions throughout the state that already have a plan, you will see that they do have topics on their agenda of providing information to the public about different water-related topics. And yeah, I'm really impressed with the amount of time that you've spent when this is not your job to research water issues. It's very complex, and it seems like every time you go somewhere, I know that clicks you to another place to go, and you look and it's like, okay, I should have been in bed 3 hours ago. So it's really great that you're taking this time out of your personal life to do this, but it's a really important issue, and so I commend you for doing it.
So I do want to point out there's one more place on the agenda for public comment on things that have not been on the agenda today. So if folks are okay, unless there's something specific to Mary Randall and DWR and her update, yes, Lori.
I just wonder, Mary, if the money right now to put this together is coming from Prop 84 and IE.
Plus matching funds.
And matching funds, yes. And where is it going to come from to keep this ongoing?
That's one of the things they have to address in their plan. Those are some hard decisions that have to be made. That's one of the requirements. Finance. Part of the finance plan is how is this group going to plan to keep on going so that you're not using state funds in order to have this project going.
So there won't be state funds to keep it going?
You know, if I could predict that, I'd be retired by now because I would know everything. So.
Barry, you just said the funds are coming from Prop 84 and local funds, local match?
Most places that give grants these days, they require that there be an investment from the people that are getting the grants because you're going to be more involved if you see it as directly your money. So RD 108, Louis Bear, he got a grant with the Bureau to do the initial startup. There's been sort of a change before Laura came on. A lot of the work that was being done by Wes Yost because it was the consultant for RD 108, but it was being done under that grant. So that was $100,000. And then the other $200,000 for the matching funds is in-kind services, or in other words, county staff generally contributing their time and effort towards this program.
And we deliberately, I want to tack on to that, when we designed our proposal for how the consultants could best be of help, we also looked at how can county staff best devote their in-kind hours that would be beneficial to you after the consultants have blown through and we're gone, and you guys are continuing on. So that's why we targeted some of the county staff's effort, at least we proposed to them, would be in outreach, in networking, in developing those bonds with the community so that you're left with that. And we're not the ones who did it, it's you folks, it's your county staff.
And by county staff, Vicki, you're with Sutter? You. So you're basically, your staff is the one that works with this, isn't it?
If you look at the technical advisory committee list that's over there, there's from each county, there's a staff person appointed by their county and a landowner representative appointed by their county. So what she's talking about for the matching, we're using the county staff, their wages and what they, for what they do, their billable hours, so to speak. Okay. And then also, as we use some of the landowners, like Jerry Cubb in Shasta County has been very involved, his amount, his billable amount as well. So that's where we're getting our matching funds.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're getting a lot of good stuff done, though. I've got some board members who have to get out of here.
Right, so I have a meeting at 1.
Mary, can you just check to make sure this is correct?
I understand. So there's Mary's email. Moving on with the meeting, board member reminders. your conflict of interest, all that good stuff. It's the month to get your conflict of interest statements in.
Vicki?
No. We've had a lot of discussion about this lately. Conflict of interest, the FPTC has not been completely responsive to us.
At all.
So, well, that would be probably at all.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to file it at your county, or file it where you would normally file it, and then or get it ready and hang on to it, and we have to wait for them. We
Our
have no
county won't
record.
accept it.
Then send it to me.
We have a plan, our code has been submitted, so
Yeah.
we're just waiting for approval, and so we just want to.
Okay, with regard to the next meeting, it's going to be looking at the updated goals and objectives. Is there anything else we need to address on the next meeting? Any other input from the board on the next meeting?
May the 7th.
It'll be May the 7th.
Leigh,
Nine
Chair,
o'clock here.
would we need to ratify Lewis's appointment to the administration committee or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, we can do that.
On the 7th.
Yeah, let's add that. Okay. To
We
that.
just got to take.
Yeah, it should be that one. We will identify the executive committee member on that date also, okay? Good point, thank you. Moving on, any member comments or updates with regard to today? Okay, and with that, any final comments from the public? Vicki?
If you haven't signed in, and you won't until now, if you have to, want to get the agenda and whatnot, you need to sign in so we'll get it to you. The next TAC meeting is on the 15th of March from 9 to 12.
Here?
Here. But we're trying to get you information, you sign in and we can get it.
Other public comments?
Thank you for your discussion today. It really helped. Really appreciated that. And I don't feel like I'm going to be being socially marketed as some of the facilitator type things that they say they have to use when there's difficult topics. You know, we could save a lot of money talking rather than having facilitators that have to handle difficult situations. And you guys help lots of things.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any closing remarks from the board? With that, I thank you all for coming. I'm sorry for the length of the meeting, but I do agree we got a lot of comments out, and I think that the general public has got a lot better feeling about what we're doing and where we're coming from. The next meeting of the board will be May 7th at 9 o'clock here. We'll try to hold it to 2 hours.